Millions watched Michael Jackson own the stage, but the moments that created his magic were never meant to be seen. Behind closed doors and empty rehearsal halls, he worked on moves until his body gave out, sometimes for 12 hours without a break. The world knew the king of pop. Almost nobody knew the man who rehearsed in secret, chasing a perfection no one else could see. This is a footage fans were never supposed to see. In 1958, a baby boy was born in a tiny two-bedroom house at 2300 Jackson Street in Gary, Indiana. His name was Michael Joseph Jackson. The house was so small that 9 children shared it with their parents. There were no big dreams in that house at first. Joseph Jackson worked long, hard days at a steel mill. Catherine, his mother, stayed home with the children. Money was tight, hope was thin, but inside that small house, something powerful was waiting to be discovered. One day, Joseph found his sons playing with his old guitar. He saw something in them, a spark, a fire, a gift, and from that moment, he made a decision that would change music forever. He put his boys into a group called the Jackson 5. Michael was only 5 years old. He was the smallest, but when he opened his mouth to sing, grown men stopped and stared. This tiny boy had a voice that could shake a room, but the cost of that voice was heavy. After school, while other children played outside, the Jackson kids rehearsed, hour after hour, day after day, 5 hours of practice almost every single day. And Joseph Jackson was not a gentle teacher. He sat in the corner with a belt in his hands, watching every move. One wrong step, one misnote, and the punishment was painful. Michael later said he was so afraid of his father that he would sometimes get sick just from being near him. He threw up before rehearsals. He cried in secret, but he never stopped dancing. Why did he keep going? That is the question that follows him through his entire life. Because inside that scared little boy was a fire that even fear could not put out. The pain made him stronger. The discipline made him sharper. And by the time he was 11 years old, the world was about to meet him. In 1969, the Jackson 5 signed with Motown Records. Their first single, I Want You Back, shot to number 1. Suddenly, the boy from the two-bedroom house in Gary was famous. But the cameras that captured his smile could not capture the truth. Behind the happy face of the little star, a battle was already burning inside him. Think about this for a moment. Michael was still a child when the world made him a star. He never got to be a normal kid. What would you have done if you were in his position? Would you have kept fighting, or would you have walked away? Share your thoughts in the comments, because what happened next would take him from a child star to the greatest performer the world has ever seen. And the secret to his power was something nobody, not even his fans, was allowed to witness. By the time Michael Jackson became a superstar, most people thought his magic was a gift from heaven. They watched him glide across the stage and believed it came easy. But the truth was very different. Michael Jackson was one of the hardest working performers in the history of music. And the proof was hidden in rooms where no cameras were allowed. While other stars slept after their shows, Michael stayed awake. He rehearsed for hours after everyone else had gone home. Sometimes he practiced until the sun came up. His dancers told stories about him that sounded almost unbelievable. He would run the same move 100 times, 200 times, until his body screamed and his clothes were soaked in sweat. Only then did he allow himself to rest. His heroes taught him this hunger. As a young man, Michael studied the legends like a scientist studies the stars. He watched Fred Astaire, who made dancing look like flying. He studied Sammy Davis Jr., a performer who could do everything. He learned from James Brown, the hardest working man in show business. And he copied the sharp, dramatic style of Bob Fosse. Then he took all those lessons and melted them into something the world had never seen, his own style. But here's the part most people never knew. Michael did not only rehearse in dance studios. He rehearsed everywhere. In hotel rooms in the middle of the night, in empty kitchens, in hallways, on tour buses, wherever he was, the dancing did not stop. People who worked with him said his body was never still. If music played, he moved. If music did not play, he hummed and moved anyway. His choreographer, Vincent Patterson, who worked with him for more than 15 years, said Michael trusted him completely with Smooth Criminal. But even then, the perfection belonged to Michael. He could feel when a move was half a second late. He could see when an arm was 1 inch too low. Things no normal eye could catch. He caught them every single time, and he never accepted anything less than perfect. The strange part is this. When dancers made mistakes in front of him, he rarely shouted. He was gentle. He would stop, show them again, and smile. But with himself, he had no mercy at all. He pushed his own body harder than he would ever push anyone else. That is why his feet moved faster than the eye could follow. That is why he could spin and freeze at the exact same spot every time. Behind every flawless performance was a mountain of secret suffering that the audience never saw. Even in his final days, the obsession did not die. On June 23, 2009, photographer Kevin Mazur captured Michael during his last rehearsal. He was thin, he was tired, but he rehearsed 13 songs that day, moving toe-to-toe with dancers half his age. Mazur said he was so energetic, so into it, that nobody could believe anything was wrong. But something was wrong. Deep inside, a storm was gathering, and the world had no idea that the man who danced like he could live forever had only 2 days left. The stage was waiting for him. The fans were counting the hours. But what happened in those final rehearsals revealed a truth nobody expected, and it would change the way the world remembered him forever. By 1983, Michael Jackson had something most artists only dream about. His album Thriller was breaking records. His videos were making history. But on the night of March 25, 1983, he stood backstage at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium, nervous in a way nobody had ever seen. The event was Motown 25, a television special celebrating 25 years of Motown records. Michael almost said no. He did not want to perform with the brothers of his old group, the Jackson 5. He was a grown man now, a solo superstar. But the organizers begged him. Finally, he agreed to one thing, a short solo performance of his own song, Billie Jean. Here is the secret nobody knew. That night, Billie Jean was the only song performed that was not a Motown song. And Michael nearly had nothing prepared. He later admitted that during rehearsals, he simply walked through performance. He had no plan, no special move ready, just a feeling that something big could happen if he trusted his body. On that stage, he wore a black sequin jacket, one white glove, and a fedora hat. When the music started, he moved differently, sharper, smarter, like a man speaking a language nobody had ever heard. And then came the moment. He slid backward across the floor while walking forward. His feet seemed to break the laws of physics. The audience gasped. People screamed. They had never seen anything like it. That move was the moonwalk. And in a few seconds, it changed everything. The special aired on May 16, 1983. More than 47 million people watched. Almost overnight, Michael Jackson became more than a singer. He became a legend. The next morning, his phone rang. On the other end was Fred Astaire, the greatest dancer in Hollywood history. Astaire told him he was a wonderful mover and a hell of a dancer. Michael later said that phone call was his real reward. The man who invented elegance had blessed him. Think about what happened in those weeks. One simple move. One night, and the biggest star on earth was born again. The song Billie Jean climbed to number 1. Thriller went on to sell tens of millions of copies, becoming one of the best-selling albums in music history. Record labels, dancers, and children everywhere tried to copy the move, but nobody could do it like him, because the moonwalk was not luck. It was years of secret practice, finally given a stage. If you enjoy discovering the hidden stories behind the world's biggest names, subscribe now, because the next part of this story reveals something most people never knew. Behind this massive success was a war, a fight for a kingdom, and it was about to explode in public. The moonwalk made Michael Jackson a legend, but legends do not sit still. In 1987, he released the album Bad. 5 of its songs reached number 1, a record no other artist had ever touched. The world thought he could not get bigger. Then he proved them wrong. The Bad World Tour began. 123 concerts, 15 countries, more than 4 million fans. He played 7 sold-out shows at Wembley Stadium alone. Over 500,000 people in one place. It was a Guinness World Record. And every single night, before each show, he rehearsed like it was his first time on stage. That was the secret nobody could copy. The bigger he became, the harder he worked. But the true treasure for fans came years later, in a place called Culver City, California. On May 16, 1992, Michael and his team gathered in a private rehearsal hall. They were preparing for the Dangerous World Tour, 69 shows across Europe, Asia, and Latin America, seen by more than 3.5 million people. That rehearsal was never meant to be released, but tapes of it leaked. Tapes 1, 2, and 4 escaped into the hands of fans. And when those tapes surfaced, the world finally saw the king of pop the way his dancers saw him, loose, laughing, and rehearsing with a joy that the concert stage never showed. In that footage, Michael runs a full show. He sings songs with more fire than he did at some real concerts. Fans who collected those tapes called them the best dangerous concert ever. Even though it was never a concert at all, it was practice. It was the invisible labor behind the legend, finally caught on camera. People hear the word rehearsal and think of boredom, but these tapes prove the opposite. Michael Jackson rehearsed like other people perform. He saved nothing. He gave 100% to an empty room, to an audience of technicians and dancers, with the same power he gave to 80,000 screaming fans. But behind this empire, a storm was already forming. The demands of fame were crushing him. The pressure of being the biggest star on earth, the eyes, the expectations, the rumors, were closing in from every side. Everyone faces moments when life becomes difficult. Maybe you have experienced a moment when nobody believed in you. Remember, even the biggest stars started with uncertainty. Michael Jackson spent his whole life proving himself, first to his father, then to the world, and finally to the voices inside his own head. The 1992 tapes show him shining. But by 1993, that light was about to flicker. What happened next would test him like nothing before and change his life forever. On March 5, 2009, Michael Jackson walked onto the stage at the O2 Arena in London. 7,000 fans screamed. 350 reporters pushed forward. Michael looked fragile, but he smiled and spoke the words the world had waited 11 years to hear. This is it. I'll be performing the songs my fans want to hear. The announcement hit like an earthquake. 10 shows were planned, then 20, then 50. The demand was so crazy that in just 4 hours, 750,000 tickets were sold. More than 1 million fans tried to buy them. Michael Jackson, at 50 years old, was coming back stronger than ever. It was supposed to be his greatest triumph, a farewell tour fit for a king. But behind the announcement, something was already wrong. The rehearsals began at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Director Kenny Ortega watched in wonder as Michael brought the show to life. The man moved like he was 30. His voice cut through the room. He corrected dancers. He adjusted lighting. He designed special effects in his head faster than the crew could build them. Everyone in that building believed they were creating the greatest concert in history. Yet the cameras captured another story, too. Some nights, Michael arrived late. Some nights, he did not arrive at all. He struggled to sleep, sometimes going days without rest. His thin frame worried the people closest to him. But whenever he stepped onto that stage, the weakness disappeared. The music healed him. The dance woke him up. And the crew kept believing the show would happen. Over 100 hours of footage were recorded during those final weeks. The producers knew they were filming something special. They did not know they were filming the last days of a legend. On the night of June 24th, 2009, Michael gave his final rehearsal. Photographer Kevin Mazur was there. He watched Michael run through 13 songs, dancing toe-to-toe with performers half his age. Michael ended the night on a high note, full of energy, full of fire. He went home to his rented mansion in Holmby Hills and told his team he was ready. The next morning, the world stopped. Michael Jackson was found at his home, not breathing. He was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. On June 25th, 2009, the king of pop died at the age of 50. The official cause was acute propofol intoxication, a drug meant to help him sleep. The man who conquered every stage on earth had been fighting an invisible war with his own body. Fans around the world collapsed in shock. Traffic stopped in Times Square. Candlelight vigils burned on every continent. The 50 farewell concerts never happened, but the rehearsal footage survived. For months later, that footage became a film called This Is It. It made more than $260 million worldwide, the highest grossing documentary in history. Fans who watched it cried, because in those final tapes, Michael was not sick. He was not broken. He was doing what he loved most, dancing, laughing, and creating magic one last time. But here's the question that still haunts everyone who watches that film. In those 100 hours of footage, what was left out? And are there tapes even the fans have never seen? After Michael Jackson left the world, his fans searched for answers in the only place he had left behind, the footage. Over 100 hours of rehearsal tapes were recorded in those final months at the Staples Center and the Forum. Kenny Ortega and his team turned them into a film. But the movie that reached theaters was only about 111 minutes long. Think about that number for a moment. 100 hours of footage. Only 2 of them made it to the screen. So the question every fan has been asking for nearly 2 decades is simple. What happened to the other 98 hours? Some of that footage was later released in special editions, but fans believe more exists. Scenes that were trimmed, performances that were never shown, moments of Michael laughing, struggling, and creating that the public has never seen. The producer said the footage was never meant to be public at all. It was private rehearsal material, captured by accident, released only after his death. That is what makes every frame so precious. It was never performed for the camera. It was simply Michael being Michael. And the vault runs deeper than the 2009 tapes. In 2025, news broke that 12 unreleased Michael Jackson tracks, songs he worked on before the Dangerous album, around 1989 to 1991, were discovered in a storage unit tied to the estate. Fans also remember the hard drives found after his death, holding more than 100 unreleased songs. Since then, new material has slowly surfaced, some officially, some leaked. Every single piece becomes an event because the world still cannot get enough of him. Even the leaked 1992 Culver City rehearsal tapes, the ones that were never supposed to escape, are now treated as treasure. The king of pop gave his last great public moments not on a stage, but in rehearsal rooms, and that is the deepest truth of his story. Michael Jackson spent his whole life being watched, but the moments that mattered most, the ones where he became the legend, happened when he thought nobody was looking. The empty room was his real stage. The rehearsal was his real concert. And the tape that kept rolling captured the man the spotlight could never show. That is why the footage still moves people today. That is why This Is It became the highest grossing documentary in history, a record recognized by Guinness World Records. That is why a new generation, born long after his death, still watches him dance and feels their hearts break. He left the world 40 years ago this month, but he never really left. His voice still fills stadiums. His moves still stop traffic. And his fans still wait, hoping that one day the vault will open again and give them one more glimpse of the king of pop doing what he loved most. But Michael is not the only icon whose success came with a hidden cost. In our next documentary, we reveal the shocking story of another legend who had everything and lost it all before staging the greatest comeback the music world has ever seen. You will not want to miss it. Until then, keep watching, keep remembering, and never forget, behind every legend, there is a rehearsal nobody ever saw